Welcome to another episode of our video series of the Philosophical History with Contemporary Critique.
Hello! It's great to be back. These topics, they really feel more urgent than ever.
I couldn't agree more. The material we're looking at today is, well, it's fundamental. We're on a mission, really, to clarify some of the most basic concepts in philosophy. Reality, truth, and authenticity. And we need to tackle why the breakdown of these ideas is causing so much, chaos today. We see them getting twisted and confused everywhere.
That's it, exactly. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? Let's just define reality, let's define truth, but it's like a tree of concepts that just keeps branching out and people get lost.
So where do we even begin?
We have to start at the very root. Before truth, before anything else, there's just reality.
Okay, let's start there then. Ground floor. What is reality?
Reality, or what some might call a fact, an olgu, is, well, it's anything that exists outside of and completely independent of the mind.
So it's the raw stuff of the universe.
Yeah.
The things that are just there, whether we're looking or not.
Precisely. It's the baseline.
So that's the independent thing. Truth, then, must be about our relationship with that thing.
You've got it. The classical, the definition that's held for centuries is that truth is correspondence to reality. It's the suitability, the agreement between what's in our head, the statement we make, and the thing out in the world.
The Latin phrase, right? Adequatio something.
Adequatio intellectus e re, the agreement between the intellect and the thing.
And it's important to say truth only applies to certain kinds of statements.
Yeah.
To propositions.
Absolutely. You can't ask if a command, like close the door, is true or false. It just doesn't work. But if I say I have money in my wallet, that's a proposition.
And we can test it.
We can test it. If the money is actually there, my statement corresponds to reality, and so it's true. It's a relationship of fidelity.
Okay, but the sources we looked at add a really interesting third layer here. Authenticity. How is that different from truth?
Right, this is a crucial distinction. Truth is about the fidelity between my mind and the object. Authenticity. Authenticity is about the object's fidelity to itself.
What do you mean, to itself?
Well, let's take your money example. My statement, this is a $20 bill, might be true. I'm correctly identifying an object that exists.
Okay.
But what if that bill is a counterfeit? It's not authentic. It fails to be true to the standard, to the essence of what a real $20 bill is.
Ah, I see. So something can be real, it exists, but not authentic.
Exactly. And that's where things start to get complicated. But the biggest philosophical problem is still ahead.
Which is?
If truth is all about correspondence, how on earth do we check that correspondence?
Right. With money, I can just look. But what about, I don't know, an abstract concept?
Or historical event.
Now you're seeing the crisis. This is what's known as the consciousness problem. We can't step outside of our own minds.
We're trapped inside our own heads, basically. Everything is filtered through our senses, our perception, everything. So we never get a direct, unfiltered, objective look at the thing in itself. We can't hold up our idea next to the real thing to see if they match perfectly.
So wait. If we can never truly confirm that initial link between our thought and the world,
then the entire structure of truth built on that idea of correspondence starts to look, well, pretty shaky.
it seems like it collapses entirely. Why even bother with correspondence if you can't verify it?
And that's exactly the conclusion some philosophers came to. It's why you get these other theories, like the deflationary approach.
What's that?
It's basically an attempt to dodge the problem. It says that saying the statement P is true is just a wordy, redundant way of just saying P.
So it's trying to strip the word truth of all its heavy philosophical weight.
It's trying to make the problem disappear. But then you get other models, like the coherence model.
Right, I've heard of this one.
Yeah.
That's where a statement is considered true if it fits consistently within a whole system of other statements.
And here we arrive at the danger we see every single day. A system can be perfectly coherent, totally logical within its own rules.
Like a flat earth theory.
A flat earth theory, or a complex political ideology. It can all hang together perfectly. But if we only care about coherence, we have to say that two contradictory systems are both correct at the same time. And that just can't be right.
This philosophical mess, it sounds exactly like what people call the post-truth world. It's like that basic trust that the fidelity between words and the world has just snapped.
It has. The analysis of bullshit by Harry Frankfurt captures this perfectly.
The distinction between a liar and a bullshitter.
Yes. A liar, you see, still cares about the truth. They care enough to try and hide it, to deceive you about it. The truth is still the reference point.
But the bullshitter?
The bullshitter is completely indifferent. They don't care if what they say is true or false. It's all about effect. And that indifference to reality, to authenticity, that's a new and dangerous sociological condition.
You see this with big conspiracy theories, right? Like people who deny the moon landing. It doesn't seem to be about a rational examination of evidence.
It's rarely about the evidence. It's an emotional act. It's about psychology, sociology. It's about carving out a special status for yourself. I'm not one of the sheep.
A feeling of control.
A profound sense of control in a confusing world. To stand against the official story makes you feel powerful, regardless of the facts.
Let's shift a little bit to the tool we use for all this, language. How much of our ability to even make these distinctions relies on having words for things?
That's the classic linguistic determinism debate. And while language is obviously vital for refining complex ideas, I'd argue that the basic act of categorization comes first.
So even before we have words.
Think about an animal or a very young child. They categorize the world all the time based on need, on desire, on memory, on utility. Is this thing food? Is this thing a threat?
The distinction is made even without a label for it.
Exactly. An animal's perception is always loaded with its basic drives: survival, hunger. It doesn't look at a tree disinterestedly. We humans like to think we can, but even our own development shows this. A child starts with a huge category like calling all men father, and only later learns to make specific distinctions.
All of this complexity seems to point to a need for, I think you called it a calibration of certainty.
Yes, this is vital.
Yeah.
We can't demand the same kind of proof for everything.
What do you mean?
You can't demand the kind of certainty you get from mathematics, where the opposite is literally unthinkable for a historical event like the moon landing.
So the proof for a triangle's angles adding up to 180 degrees is a different kind of proof than the evidence for a historical event.
A totally different kind. One is epistemic certainty, the other is based on evidence, testimony, records. And the danger is, if we demand mathematical certainty for everything,
Then nothing can ever be proven.
you validate nothing. You throw reasonable, evidence-based conclusions into the same bin as wild nonsense, and suddenly you can't tell the difference between them anymore.
And that feels like where we are, this chaos period. This idea that facts themselves have a shelf life, that they can expire. Is that really true?
I believe they absolutely do. A truth or a fact dies when it becomes something you just memorize, something you accept from authority without understanding why it's true.
So every generation has to relearn it for themselves.
They have to rediscover it. You can't just be told Pythagoras' theorem is true. To really possess that truth, you have to work through the proof yourself to see it, to understand it from the ground up.
And because we're not doing that, we're in this chaotic moment, this fetret d'oeuvre, this interregnum, where the old rules are collapsing, but the new ones haven't been born yet.
And that creates a deep, deep anxiety. People are crying out, just tell us what to believe, give us a roadmap. They want a new set of facts to memorize.
But that's not the solution.
It's not. The solution isn't about what you know, but how you know it. It's the shift from simply knowing to truly understanding.
So we had to bring it back to the person listening. When they're faced with all of this, the flat earthers, the conflicting news stories, the deep uncertainty, what should they believe?
See, that's the very question we have to learn to stop asking. The critical step is to reject the expectation that some expert, some system, some philosophy is just going to hand you the answers.
The desire to be led is the problem itself.
It is precisely the problem. The core idea of the Enlightenment, from Kant, is that true maturity, true enlightenment, is the decision to exit a self-imposed childhood.
And that means?
It means you stop waiting to be told what to think. You take on the full personal responsibility for the project of knowing and understanding the world yourself. That is what this moment in history demands from every single one of us.
A challenging thought, but maybe the most necessary one right now.
No?
Thank you for walking us through this today.
It was my pleasure. The work is never easy, but it's the only work there is.